It's now my honor to introduce our keynote speaker today, Reverend Savannah. As some of you know, our own Reverend Abigail is at Women's Spirit this week. This is the last week that, the last retreat that our Santa Rosa sisters and brothers will be doing, sisters will be doing a women's retreat. So Reverend Abigail is up there this weekend with them, also bringing some of them, hopefully, over to our own Sister Spirit. So she has invited Reverend Savannah Riker to join with us today. Savannah came to the Science of Mind teaching when she was 16 years old. She was the very first international youth community spiritual leader for United Centers for Religious Science. She held this position from 2002 to 2006. She spent those years pioneering a path for youth, speaking, facilitating workshops, and traveling throughout the United States and the world, speaking about the power of youth in the world. She has spoken to study groups in London and in Cairo. She's been working with our Science of Mind community, Temenos Self-Realization Center in the Ukraine. As a speaker, young adult facilitator, and guest teacher, she has been doing this for Temenos for the last 11 years. She lived in Egypt in 2012 during the revolution for 8 months, still pursuing her passion for global ministry. Savannah returned to the Ukraine in the fall of 2012 to teach classes and paneled 11 new Ukrainian ministers. This past September, she returned to the Ukraine again, where she co-led their annual peace conference amidst the current conflict in the Ukraine. She's pretty awesome, isn't she? You feel lucky to be here today? I sure do. Savannah recently received her Master's in Consciousness Study with Holmes Institute in Denver, Colorado, and is currently the youngest minister in Centers for Spiritual Living. She is on the cover of February's 2015 Science of Mind magazine, and her article, The Sacred Amidst the Shadows, is featured there. Her passion is to be a bridge among peoples of diverse cultures, religions globally, inspiring social change, tools for development, and the elevation of love consciousness on the planet. I invite you all to give Savannah, Reverend Savannah, a warm welcome here.
Wow. Thank you. Good morning. So, Reverend Abigail and I go way back. We've known each other probably for the last 10 years. Can I give you this? And I always used to admire her, I still do, because she was doing it first. And she was a practitioner much longer before I was, and I always thought, wow, this is so amazing. And now she's got her own community, and she's invited me here. So I'm grateful to be here, thank you. So today's topic, what is today's topic? It is, are you still you without your job, your relationship, your career, all the things in your life that you feel define you? Are you still you? So as Kathy was pointing out, I've kind of been a gypsy for the last, 3 or 4 years. I haven't stayed in one place for very long, and I've kind of been a seeker most of my life. Who in here would say they are seekers, that you are a seeker of life? Yeah. So I've been a seeker of adventure and connection and self-discovery. I've been a seeker of love and joy and all those things that we wish to fulfill our lives, to make our lives abundant and wonderful. But of course, as life would have it, in my seeking, what I've realized, and I'm still working through and in every moment, is that I was looking in all the wrong places. What was my seeking, and what is my seeking really about? So as we have seen from the news up north, the fires have kind of taken over a lot of California, and I believe, isn't the Valley Fire like the 5th largest in recorded history in California? And I was in Auburn last weekend speaking, and I was staying in a home full of smoke. And that next morning I was speaking there, and I have had time to reflect on just this idea of fire, of the meaning of fire, and how so often we have fires in our lives, and what do we do when things start to burn? So if you've done any research on fire, what you'll know is that, of course, fire burns things that are no longer needed, but it actually is really a good thing for more growth. And what happens is that the resin that is left on the pine cones in the forests is what is needed to sprout new seed for new growth. And so I was thinking to myself about the Harbin Hot Springs. Did any of you ever go to Harbin? I never got to go, I know. And how been completely lost and obliterated, and people have lost their homes, and they've lost their belongings and all of these things. And I thought to myself, how do we stand in the midst of the fire of our lives when everything seems to be burning around us? What is it that we can count on that is absolutely the eternal flame when things start to burn? And I realized, sometimes maybe things just need to burn. And maybe we don't have to do anything. Maybe we do nothing. So what is the truth when you've lost everything, when all of your roles have fallen away, when you don't identify yourself with that relationship or that job or that career or this vision that you have of success? What is it that you can rely on in every moment? So in this teaching, I like to tell people, because, somebody asks you, so what do you believe? And you go, right? Have you ever been in that situation? They say, what is the science of mind? And you're like, So I think it comes down to 3 things. And the first thing is that God, life, spirit, love, whatever you call that, is all there is. Secondly is that thought is creative. That where I put my attention is where my life will be, and that I am co-creating with this one power and with this one presence for everything that is unfolding and out-picturing in my life. And third is love is the greatest power there is. And so I've been thinking of this idea of seeking all week. And the word that keeps coming to me is this notion of craving. So what happens when you're craving something? It's like that mouth-watering, you can't get enough of it, you have to have it right in that moment, and then what happens when you get it? It's like this temporary satisfaction, right? You want more of it. So I was thinking how that is a perfect metaphor for our lives, because it's unsatisfactory, that the external world is temporary. The external world is something that we can't always rely on because it's changing all the time, right? And so I was thinking of craving and how it's this powerful desire for something, and that it's never enough because we're always looking out there to get it. So many of us in the world are looking to the world for our good. We're looking to the world to make us happy, to make us joyful, to make us whole. And so when we have this wound, or we have a challenge, or we have discomfort, what do? We fill it with all these things outside of ourselves, thinking that it's going to make us okay, because we've forgotten that the inner flame is actually something that comes from within us, that it's not something out there. That the external world can't give us anything. And so Paul Ferrini, he is one of my favorite authors of all time. And he says this about love. He says, love comes from your own consciousness. It has nothing to do with anyone else. Don't look to others to provide the love that you need. You don't need their love. You need your love. Love is the only gift you can give yourself. And when you give to yourself, the universe resounds with a yes. And I think that this applies not just to love, but to all qualities. The things of which that we seek in another, or in a situation, or in a position, whatever our status is, that it's something that we have to give to ourselves. And so I start thinking to myself, well, the craving then is that I must crave myself. It's about craving ourselves. It's about not looking to the world to feel good. How often has your mood, I know in my own life, how often has your mood been shaped or determined by a situation or what a person said to you, or a coworker? How often are we taken off track, taken off center? So everything that we need is actually in the wholeness of life itself, in the wholeness of God. There's nothing outside of us. I have this mantra, there is no one or nothing outside of myself that can determine who I am or how I express in the world. So there's a story called The Cave, one of my favorites, and there was this seeker. And he was seeking for more. He was seeking recognition, money, friends, lovers. He was seeking the good life, all the pleasures that life has to offer. And in his waking moments, they were filled with this hollowness. There was no joy to be found. And he thought for a moment, well, maybe I should just give up on life. But then he heard this news, that in a far-off place, there was this awakened one who was going to bring the gift of insight and fix all of his problems. And so he thought, I have to be in the presence of this awakened one. I have to be comforted by this presence. And so he traveled really far away, and he went to the attendants of the awakened one and begged for time with this soul. And he finally went to the clearing at dawn's light, and he was sitting by this small fire, and he noticed the awakened one sitting there by the fire, and he started to sob. And he started to completely fall apart and just feel everything he was feeling. And finally he caught his breath and he composed himself. And he looked over, and there was the hooded awakened one who pulled back her beautiful white robe. She was the master woman. She was powerful. She was radiant. She was ageless. She was compassionate. She spoke simply, and she offered him a task. She said, I want you to challenge yourself, but there's going to be risk involved. You might perish, and this might be really difficult. She said, but it's going to force you to look at your approach differently. And so he agreed, and she stood up and she placed her hands on his forehead. And all of a sudden, the seeker was plunged into an alternate reality. He felt himself accelerate down this passageway, down this corridor, and he was plunged into this dark, cavernous cave. He hit the floor in complete darkness. He tried finding a way out. He was groping and trying to get out, finding a way, and he lost track of time. The days went by, and all of a sudden, in the moments that he needed it the most, water and food would appear to him. But he fell deeper. He fell deeper into his own pain. He fell deeper into his own searching and unknowing of how to get out of this dark place. He was angry. He was cursing God. He was cursing life. Like, why would you abandon me? He turned on himself and he thought, I am so worthless. There is nothing left for me. And it was in that moment that he surrendered. And he realized that the entrapment was not the problem. It was the nature of his searching. His searching was forced. It was controlled. It was trying to make it happen. He realized for the first time in his life that this searching was futile and that it was getting him nowhere, and so he felt completely empty, in a good way. He asked for help and he surrendered his resistance to the unknown. He just let go of everything. And then it began. He perceived this light gently glowing within him. How did he not see this before? He put his attention there and he felt himself moving and expanding. And the cave could no longer confine him. He didn't leave it really, but it got bigger and he got bigger, and the cave of darkness began to shrink into this small space within him, while at the same time he began to enlarge as this extension of light. The illusion was that he was within the cave. Now he knew that in truth the cave was within him. He was free. So his opening was found not through overcoming, but by becoming more than this dark place. So the way out was not out there, but in here. So the light was within him in every situation, no matter what. So how have you been the seeker in your own life? What has been the nature of your seeking? In the Bible, in Matthew 6:26, the divine bounty says, "As God cares for the birds, who do not gather into barns, so shall we be cared for. For if we trust and do not doubt, but we are to seek the kingdom first." We've often heard, I heard growing up, the kingdom of heaven is within. The kingdom being first cause, being this one source, this one presence, this one life, that it is not outside of ourselves, that it is something that is so palpable within us. And so the three things I want you to know today is that everything is an inside job. How many of us have heard that? The effects of the world are all picturing in our life because of our consciousness, and we limit that good, and we limit that by the power of our thought and where we are putting our attention. Everything that is showing up in my life is just a reflection of what I have agreed to, what I have created space for, what I have claimed, or what I have believed. So back in 2012, I was living in Egypt, and I was there at a very volatile, difficult time. And I remember every single day was just this act of courage of, can I pull myself together to leave the house knowing I could be followed, knowing I could be harassed every single day. I think this is still on, yeah. Knowing that at any moment something could happen, because it was very volatile, it was very intense and crazy. And what it did, though, for me is that it forced me to look at a place within myself that I didn't know was there. I had so much rage, and I didn't know where the rage was coming from, and so much anger. And it was like this little one, this little 6-year-old child throwing a fit. And at the time, I had been dating someone there for a long time, and he thought, "You are crazy. What is going on with you?" And it was like everything in the outside world was bombarding my senses. I couldn't breathe. I literally could not breathe. The consciousness was so heavy. There were demonstrations going on outside. There was gunfire. There was smoke and fires burning in the street. There were armed men. I mean, it was just like a war zone, you know. But really what was going on was that it was just a direct reflection of what was happening within me. Because it had taken me like all these years to get there, to have all my distractions taken away. We are so distracted here. So it was a place of which all of those roles and identifications and titles that I had placed on myself had completely fallen away, and I was left with this raw, exposed, naked person feeling manic, feeling crazy. And what I realized is that it was this little inner child that was craving for love and craving just the sweet comfort of support and knowing that she was okay. But no one else could give that to me. I had to give it to myself. And so I started looking for the books and the research of like, what could I do? And I found the inner child work I needed to do to really address that within myself. And so in that way, the rage and the anger was a gift to me, because rage and anger is just information. It's just information for us to heal and transform, that something wants to transform, something wants to shift. And so I look at that as everything is an inside job, that if you don't like what you're seeing out there in the world, it starts here. And what I noticed is that I would go about my day in a very different way. I started giving gratitude every morning when I woke up, and I started walking the streets with a different perception. I started thinking, nothing is against me and no one is against me. And all of a sudden, my experience started to be dramatically different. Test it out for yourself. The second thing I want you to know is that you cannot give to another what you don't give to yourself. And this is something I am really looking at. How often is it that we give so much of ourselves to our families, to our children, to our spouses, to our significant others, to our jobs, and we're not feeding ourselves and we're not caring for ourselves? We can't really give with a low well. That's why we have to fill the well. That's why we do our spiritual practice. That's why we call a friend. That's why we meditate. To allow ourselves to become full again, so that when I give, I'm giving from the overflow. I'm not giving from a place of lack. I'm not giving from a place of scarcity or anger or resentment. I'm giving from a place of, wholeness. Self-care and compassion. And so this relationship to myself is key. It's like they say on the airplane, you know, if the oxygen masks come down, what do you do first? You put it on yourself first, and then you put it on your child. It makes complete sense. We have to fill ourselves up first. We have to be full and whole. And the third thing is that source doesn't change. Everything starts in consciousness, that when we feel off kilter and we feel like we're living in this world of chaos and disorder, that is the sign to come back to self, to come back to first cause. We call that God, we call that life, we call that infinite spirit. It's that inner flame that's burning within you. It's the essence of who you are, which is love, and it is never ending. You need nothing outside of yourself to fill the hole that would make you whole, with a W-H-O-L-E. What I know is that I am connected to Source always, and that this is my primary relationship. And when I have that relationship down, that's the one thing I get to focus on, is that relationship with my essence, with my Source, with who I am, then everything else starts to work itself out. Because then you don't show up broken. You don't show up in every area of your life challenged or separate. Ernest Holmes says, "In reality, we know God or truth only as we ourselves embody God or truth. And since it is impossible to embody anything outside of ourselves, this knowledge must be an inner light." So in my own journey, ministers have stuff too. We're always on this evolution of growth. And I realized when Abigail gave me this talk title a week ago, I looked at it and thought, oh, of course it was. Because what we teach is what we most need to know. And in my own journey, I'm seeing that I'm craving myself so much more. I'm craving that connection with Source, with life. I remember many years ago, probably 10 years ago, I was a youth traveler for Centers for Spiritual Living as a whole, and I remember how I identified with that role so much, and it was who I was. It was my identity for 4 years, and all of the accolades and all of the amazing opportunities that were coming to me were incredible, yes. But after I left that position, I didn't know who I was. Has that ever happened to you? You identify so much with that role or that thing that you've identified as yourself to be. It's like the ego's way of feeding us. And I realized that once I was stripped of all of that, who was Savannah? It allows us to take a look. So is your seeking really a call back to yourself? Every person we meet or situation we get into, I believe, is a mirror for our own healing. It's just information. Because what we're seeking out there is actually something we wish to or need to embody within ourselves. So all of the love and the abundance and the success and all the things that I'm looking to a situation or another to provide for me, I have to give to myself first. I have to embody that in consciousness, because the law of attraction brings it to us even more so when we do. So I want to close with this quote from Rumi, one of my favorite poets. "There is a life force within your soul. Seek that life. There is a gem in the mountain of your body. Seek that mine. O traveler, if you are in search of that, don't look outside. Look inside yourself and seek that." So let us just take a moment to go into prayer. Becoming still and taking a deep breath. Allowing these words to calm and relax you. Knowing that there's only one thing happening, and that is the activity of this one life. This one spirit, this one infinite presence and intelligence that is everywhere. Its essence is love, and it is an expression of my life and the life of every single person in this room. We are connected to it in every moment. There can never be any separation. And so I claim today our freedom from lack and limitation, from scarcity, from fear or worry. And I know that we are surrounded and imbued with an inner light, that this light never burns out, that we can always come back to the source from which it all started. Knowing that there is no beginning, there is no end, that it is all this one life that is expressing as my life in a powerful and profound way. And so I know that whatever it is in your life that must be released, that must be burned away, simply falls away, for it is not needed anymore. And that which wants to come forth to be revealed for greater transformation, for healing, for love in your life, for joy, for success, for peace to happen in your inner world, I know comes forth here and now. We are surrounded by this presence always. I ask you to bring forth some person, someone into your mind in this moment, someone who might need additional love or support. Bring them into your mind's eye. We send them light and love and this healing presence, for we know that they are supported and nurtured and uplifted in every way. That where there is fear, there is love there. That where there is darkness, there is light there. I know that everything is working together for good here and now. I claim it. I know it is so. And I release my word into the activation of the law itself, and I give gratitude for this prayer and these words. All is well. And together we say, and so it is. Amen. Peace and blessings. Thank you.